afternoon. Happy Monday. Welcome to Power Talk. I'm your host, Jean Adrienne, and I am delighted that you are taking time out of your busy Monday to join me and to get a pulse of what really is going on to help you stand in your power to create the reality you desire and that you deserve. So my guest tonight is Christian Sinclair. She is a metaphysical teacher. She leads spiritual tours, and she is one of the keynote speakers at the upcoming Reignite Your Light event down in Fort Lauderdale next month. Welcome, Christian.
Thank you so much for having me.
So there are a couple of things I want to talk with you about. I'm really excited about this. Probably the most important one is to learn about spiritual archetypes. But what I want to hear about really is a tour to Salem, Massachusetts. And you say that there's some really interesting energy around that goes back to time immemorial. And I'd love to know a little bit more about that and see if we can pique interest of people, not only for Reignite Your Light, but also to sign up for your tour.
Yeah, I personally have had such a fascination with Salem since I was very young. And like myself, like most people, you hear Salem, you think witch trials, and that's kind of the extent of it. And I know a lot of people that live in Salem, and they have even said that they felt like there was more to it than just that. Like there's an energy there that if you've been there, is kind of like a sacred site. Like you go to Stonehenge, Glastonbury, and, different sacred sites around the world. So I did a lot of digging and research about it and have tied together all of these spiritual, esoteric, physical connections from Mother Mary and Jesus to the people that founded it. There's a lot of connections with the ley lines, which, if you're not familiar with that, is like the veins of the world. So it's like the ley lines connect with Medjugorje and all these Mother Mary sightings. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, there's all this significance to it. Dating back to Jerusalem even, that Salem was the new Jerusalem. That's what it was created to be. And there was so many collective conscious and unconscious ideas about that and what it was actually supposed to be. I don't want to give too much away because some of it's going to be talked about on the Salem was founded with this idea that it was going to be this very holy, sacred place. And it was started by the Puritans, who were, at the time, a very fear-based group. Mm-hmm. And they kind of brought that consciousness into Salem instead of the new consciousness that was, I believe, destined to happen. It was like this time in our history, just like with our own personal healing, we have these moments where we know that, okay, this healing's going to come up and I can either go with it or I can retract and do the same thing I've been doing. And that was like how Salem was when it was founded. The founders, instead of moving into this new consciousness in the new world when the country was founded, stayed with the old paradigms and the old patriarch beliefs that they had come over with from England. Mm-hmm. So it was this very sacred event. The founding of Salem was this very sacred event that rippled through to the Salem witch trials. And astrologically, the founding of Salem, the Salem witch trials itself, astrologically had a lot that happened when those things happened. So it was like when that happened, it shot out across the world and into our consciousness. So yeah, it's just this really sacred event and has so many sacred ties through so many other different historically spiritual events that have happened. And we haven't really looked at it that way before. It's just been very narrow at the Salem trials itself. So I'm really excited to bring all of this new information about it because I really feel like it deserves it.
Sure. Many years ago, I made a pilgrimage, if you will, to Salem. And while I was there, I had awakenings about the lifetime that I had there. And I was one of the witches that was held there. I even found my name on the wall, so, yeah. was very powerful.
Wow.
And I did a lot of healing around it, so it was something that needed to be done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so that's why I want to do this trip right now too, because I believe that where we are collectively, consciously and unconsciously, in our society right now, I feel like this stuff is coming up really big right now. And I feel like there have been times in our history where, like the Salem witch trials, we had that opportunity to stay the same or move forward. And I feel like going and looking at these events, so many women that I know, I mean, honestly, a majority of women I know relate to either Salem or some sort of witch trials, persecution, past lives of being a medicine woman, being persecuted for our beliefs. And it's not new. This is not new that this is happening now. We're unearthing it now.
Right.
And my mission in going to Salem is to say, look at how this has been happening through our whole history. Let's do healing around the events itself, but also within and what that brings up for us, and also how that affects the collective conscious and unconscious.
For sure. So how can viewers find out more about this and potentially sign up to go on this event?
It's all on my website, christiansinclair.com, and more information about exactly what we'll be doing, from toning to, toning in sacred sites, to healing the actual events itself and our own personal work. It's all on there.
Fantastic. So one of the things that sort of you coined is spiritual archetypes. Can you talk about that? Because that's fascinating to me.
Yeah. So I came up with the spiritual archetypes in 2016. And, I shouldn't say I came up with it. It was given to me. I woke up with the information, spiritual archetypes, and I saw it all. And from my experience in spirituality in the spiritual field, I just knew them all. It was like, I saw them all. I knew my friends, like I could put them in an archetype, or family members, anybody I met, I could see them as these archetypes. Mm-hmm. So I just put it out onto paper and put it into a quiz at the time. It was, what is your spiritual archetype? And then it became guidebooks, and now is becoming a book. But a spiritual archetype is a compass for our spiritual path. We all have different spiritual paths, but we all have similarities that we go through, like spiritual awakenings, or things that we feel strengthen us or weaken us, or certain lessons that we have on our spiritual path. So there's 9 spiritual archetypes, and it's a compass to use on the spiritual path to help navigate more peacefully the things that we go through, and also to see that we're not alone on our spiritual path. Sometimes we feel like I'm the only one going through this thing right now, and it's really amazing when you connect with the archetype and see there's other people that go through this, and this is something that I can use to actually benefit me. Almost I don't know how to say it, but I guess to more easily navigate it, to not feel so bad, to actually feel like, okay, I've got a guidebook to help me along the way, instead of feeling like, I don't know what's happening to me. I don't know what this insight is. I don't know what these things coming up for me are. It's a way of having help.
So do we have just one spiritual archetype, or is this something that we go through as we evolve and move through different ones of them?
The way that I look at it is almost like astrology. Like, you have your sun sign and your moon, and, we all have the signs within us, but some are more prominent than others. So, some people connect really strongly with one and only one, and I've met some people that feel they connect with all of them in some way. So it just kind of depends on who you are and where you are in your path.
Cool. And so how can knowing your spiritual archetype actually support you as you move through your life and your journey and your awakening?
Well, I think one of the biggest things that is difficult in spirituality is sometimes not knowing what's happening to us or why, and like, if you've ever been through like a dark night of the soul and you don't know what's happening, it's way more difficult when you don't know what's happening. But when you know what's happening, it's like, okay, now it makes sense. All these things fall into place. I get it. Now I can go with it and actually get my lessons. There's a lot of times, it doesn't matter who you are or how strong your faith is. I feel like it's really easy to fall into the trap of feeling like life is happening to us instead of for us. And in spirituality especially, because if we feel like I have so much faith, or I do my mantras, or I do whatever you do, you maybe feel like, why is this happening to me when I'm doing all the right things, And so if we have an idea of why things are happening, it's easier to navigate, but we also see where the lessons are. Each archetype has different lessons on their spiritual path. So when you read that and you see, okay, these are my lessons, and then here's why I'm having these things come up in this lifetime, and here's what I can do to release those or heal those. Like one of the things I do is I recommend certain modalities for each archetype. This might support your lessons more, so that archetype can look at that and say, oh my gosh, I actually have some clue as to why this is happening and how to work on it or move through it more fluidly or effortlessly.
Can you give an example of a modality that you would recommend to go with a particular archetype?
Yeah, so for instance, the Eastern philosopher is an archetype who, one of their main lessons, I call it, is that they carry a lot of ancestral beliefs. So they are families that have a long lineage of this is how we do things, and we don't go against that. So one of the things that I recommend for them is something like DNA theta, where you're getting into the DNA of yourself and you're removing those ancestral beliefs on the deepest level possible, so that you're not carrying somebody else's beliefs. You actually get to form your own.
That's perfect. Yeah, I like that. So what are you going to be talking about at Reignite Your Light?
Reignite Your Light Summit, I'm going to be talking about the inner light revival, which is, we all have a light within us, our soul, and through adversity, through trauma, through struggles that we go through in our lives, we bury it. Mm-hmm. And, it's our own fears and guilt and shames. But what I want to share is why we have that light and why it's so important to shine. And not only that, but how to remove some of the blocks and filters that keep us from shining our most authentic self.
Cool. I cannot wait to hear that talk.
Thank you.
Great. It's going to be an amazing event. And so viewers, if you are watching tonight and you don't know what we're talking about, this event is coming up the 22nd, 23rd of June, going to be at the Westin on the Beach in Fort Lauderdale. It's called Reignite Your Light events.com. It's called Reignite Your Light. The website is reigniteyourlightevents.com. And you can find out everything you need to know there. It's very reasonably priced, and so you could come join us. I'll be there. Last week we talked to Dee Wallace. She's going to be there. Dan Millman is going to be there, and just a host of really great speakers. So you'd love it. Everything that Robin Rose has ever put her hands on to do has been amazing, which is why as soon as she told me about this, I said, okay, I'm in. Because, yeah, she does it right. So, yeah, check it out and join us. Yeah. So, Christian, this has been lovely. I can't wait to actually meet you in person in a month, or just maybe a hair over that. We're going to have a great time. And I know that your talk is going to be lovely too. So I look forward to seeing you then. So thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and viewers, next week my guest is going to be Robert Mack. He's another one of the speakers for the Reignite event, and so I'm sure that you will find a lot of great information from Robert next week. And until that time, please remember that people who take responsibility for their lives create the reality they desire. I love you all. Ciao.